This is Shopify Masters, the e-commerce marketing podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs. It's powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, and anywhere in between. To get an extended 30-day trial, visit shopify.com/masters. Hey entrepreneurs, my name is Felix and I'm the host of the Shopify Masters podcast. Each week we put out podcast interviews with successful e-commerce entrepreneurs or experts to give you inspiration, motivation, and actionable tips to increase your traffic and sales so your store can generate the sales you need to live the life you want. In the last episode, you heard from product director Brandon Chu on Shopify's latest integration with Amazon and how you can take advantage of it. On today's episode, you'll learn from a successful e-commerce entrepreneur that's built and sold multiple e-commerce businesses and now works with hundreds of store owners. In this episode, you'll learn what kind of products do well on Amazon, how to build a high converting product page on Amazon, and how to use Amazon paid ads for more than just driving traffic. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Youderian from ecommercefuel.com and the E-commerce Fuel podcast. And we've had Andrew on previously to talk about his experience starting and selling e-commerce businesses and his most recently sold store, Right Channel Radios. Definitely recommend checking out the previous episode with him. We went to lots of great topics. Again, for anyone that's really interested in hearing what it's like to build and eventually sell a business, I think that's a great episode for you to listen to. But today we're going to have him come on to talk specifically about Amazon and to hear his tips and advice and his experience and working with so many other entrepreneurs that are selling on Amazon. Have him come on and talk about what it's like and how to build a successful business on Amazon. So welcome, Andrew.
Hey, thanks, Felix. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a bit more about your background for anyone that hasn't heard that previous episode. Just give us a refresher of all the businesses, all the e-commerce stores that you started, and kind of your evolution through e-commerce as an entrepreneur.
So my background in e-commerce is I got in full-time in 2008, started a CB radio business called Right Channel Radios online. In 2010, started a second business called trollingmotors.net, again, e-commerce, dropshipping based, and sold Right Channel Radios this year, sold Trolling Motors a couple of years ago. So I've started and sold a couple e-commerce stores, and then kind of along the way started a community for high 6- and 7-figure e-commerce store owners. It's called E-commerce Fuel, and I've been running that for about 4 or 5 years now. So that's kind of my experience in a nutshell in terms of e-commerce.
Very cool. So you obviously have a lot of exposure and heard and worked with many different sellers that are selling on Amazon, that are not, that are different stages of their business on selling on Amazon. Based on what you've seen, what does success look like on Amazon? Like, what should people expect if they open their one of their sales channel into Amazon? Maybe they already have an existing store. What does Amazon do for a business?
In terms of what it does for a business, it's just, it's the biggest force in e-commerce, in 2017. It gives you access to just an enormous market of customers that are comfortable buying on the platform, that search for products on the platform. I think that there's more, I'm trying to remember the stat for sure, but I think there's more product searches starting on Amazon now than there are on Google, which is crazy. It just gives you access to, in terms of what it can do for your business, is it can blow up your business if you're the right kind of fit for an Amazon to use that platform, and it can help you scale in a really efficient manner. So, especially if you're using something like FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, you can really dramatically increase your sales without having to increase your warehouse or your staff or your overhead or anything like that. So, it allows you to scale up with access to a massive marketplace. Is the big upside.
Mm-hmm. And for any sellers that you've seen approach Amazon and approach opening that up as a sales channel for the first time, or do they have to approach selling differently, or any other processes in their business that they need to reevaluate prior to launching or expanding into Amazon?
Yeah, you've got to, it's not a great fit for everybody. I'd say the biggest thing is, Amazon's a great fit for someone who obviously wants to grow their channel or business and has something unique to sell. Because you are on there competing with, because it's such a massive marketplace, there's a lot of competition there as well. And so if you're just trying to resell someone else's widgets that you can drop ship or even buy in bulk, chances are there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds of other people trying to sell those exact same widgets. And you leverage something like FBA on there where it's really easy to to run the operational side of the business, and you get into some pretty nasty price wars. So you do need to think, one, you need to think about how am I bringing something unique to this marketplace? Because if you are, it's an incredible way to move products. The other thing is you need to think about Amazon has kind of built a reputation, which is great if you're a customer, and it's also great if you're a seller. But you got to be careful that they put the customer, number one, with unequivocally number one, and they have some pretty strict standards for how quickly you have to be able to respond to customer emails, how quickly, what kind of things you have to accept as returns. The customer is almost always right at Amazon, so you got to get used to that a little bit, and you also have to get used to the fact that you're building a business on someone else's property, more or less, on someone else's platform. You don't own the customer. Amazon owns the customer. And so it's great because you can really scale up a business quickly and generate a lot of sales and cash flow. But long term, it's hard to build. You don't have an asset. You do have an asset you can maybe sell, but it's a much riskier one because you don't control the email list. You don't control the domain, right? You're not controlling the purchasing process. And so there's some dangers there as well. But those are the things, kind of the big things you need to be thinking about in terms of going to Amazon.
Gotcha. So I like that you said you have to have something to sell. And I think it's an important thing also to note that there is a difference between being an inventor and being a business owner or an entrepreneur. I think maybe in the last 10 years or so, because there's been so much emphasis on people starting tech startups or tech-based businesses, there's this idea that you have to come to the market with something completely brand new every single time in order to survive. But are you talking about unique as in like a product that doesn't have a patent yet and you're coming with something brand new? Or are there other ways to be unique other than to bring a whole new product to solve a problem?
Yeah, you don't know. It doesn't have to be. You by no means need to have a patent to be able to list something on Amazon. What I'm talking about is selling just without any kind of modifications or changes existing products. So for I'm from the CB world, if I tried to go and we never got onto Amazon when I owned my CB business because there were just again dozens of other people selling the exact same antennas that we were looking to sell that had the exact same SKU from the exact same brand. So if really, for a while, there was a really big rush of people doing what's called private labeling, where they'd go out, they'd buy a product, they wouldn't make any changes to it. They'd buy it from a factory or supplier, slap their brand and logo on it, throw it on Amazon. And at that point, if it was a decent product and you could market it well, you could do pretty well. I think that's getting quite a bit harder, today after we've had, 2 or 3 years of a lot of people doing that. But at the same time, you don't have to reinvent, the space shuttle from scratch. I know a lot of people go out, look for products on Amazon or in the market that sell well, but maybe have a couple aspects that people aren't happy with or complain about, make a couple tweaks, which is much easier than completely redesigning the whole product, then put their brand on it. And that's, that can be a viable way to get a unique enough product off to make Amazon work.
Okay, cool. So for anyone that is thinking about starting a business and going that route where they source a product that's not completely where they want it to be based on what they've seen from customers and then bring that onto Amazon, are there any, kind of research that you can do to determine what you should be changing about a product that you could, buy and rather than just slapping a label on it, actually make adjustments to? Like, how do you know what kind of adjustments you should be making to an existing product if you wanted to bring it into Amazon?
Yeah, a couple different ways. If you have an existing business, your current customer base is probably a fantastic, first place to start. Either chatting with them, or if you're running a business, you're going to know the pain points that customers have, and you're going to know to look at your top 5 best-selling items and figure out what the problems people have with them. Or even if you've got, a business, look at the last, 30 people to buy X product and spend 2 or 3 days and call them up, and it might be a little awkward on the phone for the first, 10 seconds or so, but say, hey, I know you bought this, like you didn't review it. Are you liking it? What could be improved with it? That's one way. Another way is to go onto Amazon or other places and look at the reviews, see what people like about the product and what they don't like about it. And especially when people are complaining about stuff, there's a lot of opportunity there to come out with a similar version that fixes those pain points. So it's going to vary for any market, but those are a couple that can be effective.
Okay, cool. So obviously a unique product like you're talking about would do much better than a private label product where it doesn't have any enhancements at all. What about specific industries? Do you find that there are specific industries or specific categories that tend to do better on Amazon than others?
I'm sure there are. I don't know. I haven't seen the data enough across categories to know which ones do better. Amazon is so... you can buy just about anything on Amazon now. So I'm sure there are, but I don't have the expert. I haven't seen that to be able to definitively say, one way or another.
Gotcha. Cool. So when you think about a seller's kind of strategy or approach to entering the market, does it always make sense to start on Amazon, or is it something that you should expand onto later? Like, what order of I guess marketplaces should you enter? Start with your own and then enter into Amazon, or start on Amazon and then eventually build out your own property? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it depends on the market and your product line. I'll give a kind of a high level vague answer and then give you one that's a little more concrete.
Sure.
If you're doing if you're selling something that's really handcrafted, and the story is tied up a lot into that, and your website experience is instrumental to selling that product, you probably want to get your website up first, or at least a really solid version of that. But I'd say in most cases in 2017, like getting something up on Amazon, especially if you have your own proprietary line or at least branded line, that is where I would start for a couple of reasons. One, you can get going faster. You don't have to build a website from scratch. You don't have to figure out as much of the traffic issue. You've got traffic built in, at least on the search side. You can get traction more quickly with Amazon, which can help you get feedback more quickly. It can help you start moving product more quickly. There's a lot of, early on in any venture, getting some early traction is important. So that would, for most cases, I would say start on Amazon, with an emphasis on don't get so caught up with, if you do get traction, you do succeed on Amazon, you totally neglect your own proprietary branded site, because that's going to be harder to build up. It's going to take more work. You don't have the traffic source built in, but if you want to build something more defensible, that's safer, less risky long term, and have control of your customers, that's going to be the better place. So kind of a long way of saying it depends, but I would probably go Amazon first and then start building up your own presence.
Yeah, that makes sense that you're able to get a lot more traction early on because you don't have to focus so much on the traffic acquisition, because Amazon has that built-in traffic. And once you do have both of these running, where you have your own Amazon store and then your own store, or maybe not even Amazon, but some other sales channel that you're working with, it then becomes your problems don't necessarily double, but your business does become more complex now that you have multiple sales channels. Based on your experience or experience that you heard from others, are there any ways to help balance and manage these multiple sales channels that you're not operating in if you have Amazon or another marketplace plus your store?
Yeah, so just how to make it a little bit easier to sell on all of these multiple channels? Is that what you're asking?
For sure.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues you have is you do run into managing different order flows coming in. To make it easy, let's say you're just selling on Shopify and selling on Amazon. So you've got orders coming in from multiple places. You have inventory issues, depending on if you're doing FBA or if you're doing, fulfilled by merchant, where you sell on Amazon, but you actually package up the item and ship it out. So one thing that can help a lot is getting some software, it's called an ERP or an ERP type system. So something like ShipStation, Skubana, or Doro, something like that. And we could probably do a whole episode on, what those different things do and integrating them into your store. But at a high level, they help you manage orders from multiple sources. So you'll have a single dashboard for your Shopify orders and your Amazon orders. They'll be able to sync up your inventory. So if you're selling on Shopify, Amazon, and eBay, and you run out of product, widget X, that information gets disseminated out to all the platforms, and so you don't sell a bunch of stuff you don't have. So that would be the big thing I would think about.
What I've seen some brands and maybe even some stores that are selling multiple products do is that when they launch on Amazon, they discount it heavily, or they have some kind of coupon code just to build that velocity that you're talking about. Have you seen this in your experience as well? Like, what are your thoughts on that approach?
Yeah, I think I think I have seen people do that before. And are you talking, Felix, are you talking about just to build the velocity or for generating reviews or for both?
It seems to be for both, where they're trying to generate the velocity, but then also asking people to leave a review, of course, and then I'm sure that helps as well with your rankings.
Yeah, so definitely have seen some people do it on the discounted front just for velocity. I've probably seen more people historically do it with reviews, where you offer a very deep discount bordering on giving the product away for free to generate reviews. But the problem is the last, September-ish, this fall, Amazon really cracked down on that. Mm-hmm. And incentivized reviews, at least the way most people have done them, aren't allowed anymore. So yeah, I have seen that. More on the review side though, but you can't do it with reviews quite as much. So
yeah, I've seen that happen too. I'm interested in seeing how that's going to affect their review systems, because it's people depend on it pretty heavily. Even when I do buy a product from a brand from their store directly, I will go over to Amazon, just look at the reviews first. It's almost like you're doing research on Amazon a lot of the times. So I'm interested in seeing how brands can react to that.
Yeah, it will be. I think looking at what people are going to do. Without, because that was kind of the bread and butter, kind of the old original way to launch a product on Amazon was get your product, get it put online, get some, kind of prime the pump, so to speak, with, 10 or 20 kind of incentivized reviews. And then some people would do those long-term forever. Most of the people, kind of the savvier entrepreneurs I knew wouldn't do that, because you can tell, like when you can land on an Amazon page and when 90% of them are incentivized reviews, it kills confidence, right? But at the same time, reviews were crucial for getting that initial traction. And so a lot of times people would get 10 or 20 incentivized ones and then build organically on top of that. But going forward, it'll be interesting. There's Amazon actually has something called the Amazon Early Reviewer Program, where more or less it's the same thing as incentivized reviews, but Amazon is running it. So they'll pay people $1 to $3, I think, for leaving a review. And of course, they can actually control it, and they know that they're not going to penalize people if they leave a bad review. So that's something that might be a potential alternative. There's Vine, which is Amazon's review program. But if you want to take advantage of that, I think you have to be a vendor central. Like you have to sell in wholesale bulk to Amazon, which is not for everybody. But I think ultimately, it'll also, it's good for the ecosystem also in that it's going to make people make better products, right? Which in the long run is not a bad thing. So.
For sure. So speaking of these incentivized reviews where you're a consumer and you see obviously that there's some bias going on, some kind of stuffing of the ballot, I guess, to try to get that early traction, it is going to lead to a pitfall later on, like you're saying, because people are going to recognize this. People aren't dumb, and they can obviously see there's some kind of trend or something going on behind the scenes. Do you know of any other kind of pitfalls, especially for that you see some entrepreneurs run into when they're launching on Amazon or running a business on Amazon? Yeah,
I think one of the big things is not keeping enough inventory in stock. This is something that happened to me. Launched a product on Amazon, and it's tough because you launch a new product, you're trying to balance two things. You're trying to balance your downside risk if it doesn't sell, and you're also trying to balance the risk that it does sell really well and you run out of stock. Because if you run out of stock on Amazon, it just destroys. We were just talking about how sales velocity is what helps with your rankings. That kills your momentum. So if you can think about climbing a mountain, you run out of stock, any progress you've made in the rankings, you fall all the way back down to the bottom. So that's a big one, because it takes a long time to place a new order and get it back to your fulfillment center or fulfilling yourself. That's one. I think running into issues with cash flow is another one. A lot of people, especially if you're making something proprietary, people underestimate how much cash a successful product business on Amazon consumes, because you have to be, if you're growing and you sell out of 1,000 quantity and your next order has to be for 2,000 or 3,000, well, you've got to front the cash for that anywhere from 3 to 6 months before you can recoup it. And so you can be selling your stuff like gangbusters and have a major cash crunch. So that's another issue I see. I think a lot of people still are thinking they can sell kind of Me Too products where they can just, because there's all this hype about Amazon like being a gold rush and there's so much money to be made. And I think the days of being able to throw up a product that's not differentiated, that's not unique, and be able to make it, make money just are over. Even if you're doing it on the private label front, that's getting a lot harder. So those are some of the pitfalls I see people falling into.
It sounds like a lot of it comes back to just managing your own expectations better, and going to one of them is managing managing that inventory, the inventory projections a lot better. And obviously, Amazon is going to be one of the big ones that can eat up a lot of your inventory. But again, if you're on other marketplace, or maybe even just launching your product for the first time, getting that projection down right is very important. Through your years of experience managing inventory, are there ways to project better? Are there ways to have data to understand how much inventory you should be having on hand?
Yeah, and so to be totally candid, I have my experience with managing inventory on Amazon is pretty limited due to a little bit of selling, but not nearly as much as the number of SKUs is pretty limited. And so you get into inventory management where you've got dozens of SKUs across lots of products. That's where it gets a lot trickier. So yeah, there's definitely software out there that can help you do that, but I personally don't have any experience using some of that more in-depth software, but it is available and it can be very helpful.
Cool. And in speaking of selling out too much, I think one of the keys, I think people always think that's a great problem to have. You're selling all your products, good problem to have. And in order to do that, I think one of the keys is to have a high converting product page, to make a product page that gives all the customers exactly what they're looking for, but not too much. You don't want it to be overwhelming. Based on your experience or based on what you've seen, what are some keys to having a high converting product page on Amazon?
Yeah, a lot of them I think are fairly straightforward, but it's amazing how many people don't do them. I was looking at a product yesterday on Amazon that probably failed on 3 out of the 4 of these. First one is, I think probably the biggest one is just awesome images. High res, well done images that show all the aspects and facets of your product. That's huge. And also, just making sure that you can enhance them as well. I think it's pretty helpful sometimes seeing the benefit-driven little logos or tags that help you explain, that help explain the visual aspects of a product. So images are huge. A solid benefit-driven copy is more important than you think. Getting in there and really spending a lot of time on that copy. Solid copy always sells really well. Reviews are enormously, I think for me, do you shop on Amazon a whole lot?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, I do a decent amount as well. And a lot of times when I'm scanning a category page, before you look at the copy, before you look at the images, maybe you see a thumbnail, but it's tiny, right? You're going to see 2 things, and I scan off of them. One is the title, so an important title that's very, that really focuses on why your product is different, what it is and why it's different, I think is crucial. And then secondly are the reviews that you have. And those are the 2 things I scan for. And Prime, I always check the FBA box. So those are the 3 things at a high level category I look for. And we talked about reviews. Reviews are, it's gotten more difficult to do those. But those are a fairly large facet of it too. So those would be the main elements, I would say, that you can you'd really kind of look to focus on for a high converting, well selling product.
Yeah, whenever I shop on Amazon, if I already know or familiar with the product, familiar with the competitors, alternatives for the product, I would just look at the title like you're saying, maybe glance quickly at the photo, but I go straight down to look at the most helpful reviews, the positive and negative. And if the reviews most of the time will sell me enough that I don't even bother going back to read the product description just because I'm already familiar with it. It's supposed to do, and as long as the reviews, especially if the reviews are saying that they use that product specifically to solve the same problem I have, it's golden for me. I'm going to buy it without even having to read any more from the seller directly. So definitely vital. And one thing I've been seeing is that on some Amazon listings, there'll be a Q&A section, but then also the opportunity for sellers to respond to comments, respond to reviews themselves. What are your thoughts on this? Whether it be on Amazon or anywhere public, when customers are leaving feedback, positive and negative, do you recommend, not that you recommend, but what's your experience been with answering these or replying to these kind of comments and reviews?
Yeah, I don't know I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about if it definitively plays into, Amazon's algorithm with how well you rank. I don't know if anyone can answer that apart from, if we can get an insider or Mr. Bezos on, but I think in just kind of general practice on Amazon or your own site, it's really important. And it's a signal to me, it's a signal that the seller of this product is engaging with the buyers and cares about what people think about the product. It's nothing but a good sign unless, you get on there and you rail against people, right? So empathizing with problems, thanking people for their suggestions, thanking them for buying it, anything like that. Yeah, I can't see it as anything then other than a good thing, and potentially even a potential small, it could be something that ties into the ranking as well. So one other thing, just a little aside, that you mentioned about building like a high converting product page. One thing I forgot to mention was one thing that's cool about Amazon is you can get in. Amazon has its own built-in traffic kind of paid traffic system, kind of like AdWords, but it's within the Amazon ecosystem. And you can get in there and you can run kind of paid advertisements where Amazon will just send paid traffic to your product page. You bid on it just like you would, you can say I'll bid $2 a click or whatever it is. And you can run it and collect data. And after, a couple months, you can see what search terms are driving the most profitable traffic. So you can see which terms, which keywords convert the best and which don't. And you can optimize your campaign. So it's not something you can do out from day one, but over time, if you invest a little bit in paid traffic, you can really, just like you would with Google AdWords, be able to optimize each product and each campaign for what converts the best. And that's another great way to be able to boost those conversion pages. So,
that's a great idea. That it's not just to try to get that conversion right off the bat, but just to use it to collect data then you can use to improve your product page and get that organic conversions. Cool. And I want to switch topics a little bit and talk about something you mentioned earlier, which was FBA, Fulfilled by Amazon. Can you say a little bit more about this? And what kind of businesses have you seen have success using Amazon's FBA program?
I'd say probably 75 plus, if not, 85, 90% of people that I know that are seriously investing resources into Amazon are on FBA. It just makes it from a seller's perspective. It's hugely advantageous to be able to send in all your stuff and have Amazon do the heavy lifting in terms of storage and fulfillment. On the buying side, like we were talking about, Felix, it's a filtering metric I use because, we live in a world now, thanks to Amazon, where 2 days is a long time to wait for your package, right? Mm. So it gets things to your customers more quickly. So it's I'd say most people are using it. And were you asking did you ask kind of when it makes sense to use and when it doesn't?
Yeah, I think that's a great follow-up question. Is it something that you should get into right away when you are launching on Amazon to go through FBA, or something you tack on or improve towards later?
You could wait. I don't necessarily know why you'd want to. It's fairly easy to get stuff sent in, and there's a huge benefit in terms of conversion when you're using FBA. And most of your competitors are going to be, even if it's not for a direct product, people are going to be comparing your listing against others that they can get immediately for free. So I mean, there are some cases where maybe it doesn't make sense, but in the vast majority, I would say start from scratch. The only times I think it maybe doesn't make sense is if you're shipping, enormous, massive products. But then that's just, it's probably not something you want to be doing anyway. So I'd say, for most of the time, 90% plus, I'd start off with FBA out of the gates.
Very cool. So, speaking of FBA, we mentioned earlier that over the last few years, there's been a huge push in private labeling and using FBA to launch on Amazon. We talked a little bit earlier about incentivized reviews also being a way to kickstart and build that early traction when you're launching on Amazon. And these are obviously, trends that we've seen pop up. Or trends that you've seen pop up, but then also now starting to enter more of a crunching phase. Obviously, with the reviews, you can no longer do that. Private labeling is becoming much more competitive. Are there other trends that you've seen on Amazon go through this cycle too, where it's kind of maybe on a downturn where you might not want to invest your next couple of years pursuing?
Those would be the big ones. We kind of covered them. Just the Me Too private label phase, and then the incentivized reviews phase. Those are the big ones that I see. I mean, I think the other one that probably is going to make a little bit more. Again, we touched on this already as well. Maybe become something that you hear more of this year is just the danger of building your brand entirely on Amazon. I think it's probably going to get more common. There's a ton of course. There's an amazing amount of opportunity to be had there, but you just do want to be careful. Like anything, you don't want to put too many of your eggs in one basket. So I think having a good strategy because the last 2-3 years, people have just seen their businesses, in some aspects just blow up with Amazon, which is awesome. But taking a long-term approach, making sure that you also have a long-term plan to make sure you also have your own website that can supplement that. I think that'll be something that people emphasize more, in 2017.
Yeah. So speaking of that, are there any other rising opportunities that you see happening maybe in the early days with Amazon that again, first time entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are thinking about launching into Amazon should consider pursuing?
Yeah, one thing, it's called enhanced brand content, and it's something that Amazon's rolling out here where you can add videos to a product page, where you can add you get more room to create your own custom kind of area, just like you would on your own site, to be able to sell and display your products. And traditionally, that's been, we've all went to Amazon and seen videos and really kind of, deluxe product listings. But normally those are reserved for people who either are on Amazon exclusives, which is kind of a program that is kind of a selective program where Amazon brings in certain brands, or for people who are selling products exclusively to Amazon wholesale. So they have like a vendor account with them. But this enhanced brand content is something that is getting rolled out by Amazon for regular sellers, and it lets you be able to do all the things that I mentioned. And for now, I think in the early stages, I think it's free. They may charge in the future, but that's something where especially as it rolls out and not everyone is taking advantage of that, that's something I think that can give you a competitive advantage and a leg up over competitors who may not be aware of it or not implementing it out of the gates.
Very cool. So one other, I think, really popular move, I think 2016 was a big year for it, but things have slowed down for it because, well, I'll get into it first, but the Amazon print on demand was a huge thing that I was seeing everywhere, where there were a lot of case studies out there about how easy it was to essentially, launch a merchandise brand on Amazon, have them printed, it goes through the FBA program as well. So you don't touch inventory at all. You get a lot of traffic, again, from Amazon, but that's slowed down because I believe Amazon has an invite-only mode right now, and it's they're maybe 6 month waiting list. You don't have much experience with that, but you mention to me before today about how you have some experience or were doing some research on outsourced print fulfillment. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? Like, what's your experience with that? What have you been able to find with that particular business model?
Yeah, and this is something where, in terms of research, just a long evening doing some research about, this kind of starting up an on-demand printing art business for some stuff. And so take this with a grain of salt, because it has not been, again, 2-3 hours over a beer versus 3 weeks of in the trenches stuff. But I was looking at like Printful, which is kind of has the same model as Amazon Merchandise on Demand, and I think I'm not sure exactly how the pricing looks on the Amazon side. For Printful, it seemed like the margins were fairly small, and there's a lot of convenience to it, but you'd have to move a lot of product to be able to make it make sense. And also, there's some downsides on potentially anytime you outsource something, you've got some potential quality issues, and especially when the primary medium is T-shirts or art, that can be something that can cause some problems. So it was something I thought about doing and just kind of as a fun little experiment. But after reading some reviews and some case studies from people who had tried it, who had tried the outsourced fulfillment model in terms of the printing and the graphics, and then brought it in-house, and also just the pricing that you get when you hook it up directly, it would be, I think I still might try it long term or initially, because it's very inexpensive to test out of the gates if I wanted to try a business like that. I think they're, medium to long term, there's probably some good advantages to bringing that kind of stuff in-house, because you have more control, your economics are better. It's not as convenient, but once you scale, there's some benefits to be had by bringing it a little bit closer onto your thumb.
And you mentioned that you had to be running large numbers for print on demand or outsourced print fulfillment to make sense. Can you say more about this? Is it because of the smaller margins?
Yeah, and again, this is just, I didn't do a ton of comparison shopping here, but I was looking at the services I was looking at. You sell a hoodie for, a printed hoodie for $40, and they wanted $30 for it, and then you got shipping, and so you got to sell a lot of hoodies, making $10 on a $45 item to make it pencil out. So that just kind of struck me as fairly low margins for the customization and the stuff you were doing. Again, I don't blame them. If I was running a business like that, they're making it as easy as possible, but just the economics behind it made me think, this would be a lot of hoodies to build up a good-sized business with that profit model. So
for sure, makes sense. Awesome. So thanks so much for your time, Andrew. Lots of great information about how to be successful on Amazon. Again, Andrew runs ecommercefuel.com, an e-commerce fuel podcast. Highly recommend you check that out. What are your plans? Because like we were saying before, you sold off your right channel radios, which we talked a lot about, about in the previous episode we recorded with you. What do you focus on in the next, I guess in 2017?
Yeah, good question. And I actually, to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. I'm looking over a couple of things. I'm in this for the last, sold the business 6 months ago. The last 6 months since then, really focused on running our private event and doing a big, massive overhaul of our community. And for the first time in a while, I've had the chance to kind of catch my breath. And so I don't have a good answer for you. I'm looking at potentially getting another business up and running off the ground. Also looking potentially on maybe thinking about focusing on the community and trying to be a facilitator for our merchants there full time to serve them really well. I don't know. I'm kind of excited. I'm just as curious as you are. So
awesome. Well, definitely check out ecommercefuel.com, the podcast as well, to stay up to date with Andrew. Anywhere else you recommend listeners follow along with to see what you're up to?
Yeah, ecommercefuel.com, the podcast, like you mentioned, on iTunes, Twitter, at Youderian, Youderian, or at ecommercefuel. Those are the places where you can pretty much figure out anything I'm up to.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Felix. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Shopify Masters, the e-commerce marketing podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs. To start your store today, visit shopify.com/masters to claim your extended 30-day free trial.